Hello everyone and welcome here to this practicing session which is all part of the Beethoven project. I'm heading towards the moment where I start recording all the solo works of Beethoven in 60 works. We'll make some dedicated videos for that, no worries. But as a special unique feature, so to say, I'm sharing actually also the preparation process with you of this Beethoven project and practicing sessions that go often live, but this one is not live, it's being premiered, which means that you have the same options as during a live stream with the chat, and it looks like a live stream, but it actually isn't. One of the main, most important conditions for a live stream is that the person who's doing the live stream is actually live here with you, which is, as we speak, not the case. I'm recording this a few days before we go on a short holiday, so since I will not take this Frenzel piano with me, I thought why not record this. We have done this a few times before. And so we will dive into the second sonata by Beethoven, the A major sonata. And before we do so, I would like to launch an idea with you, because I was thinking, having received a lot of questions from you, actually enjoying sharing these practicing sessions with you together, it's actually not so difficult for me to record more practicing sessions. This setup now, I'm for the first time recording directly to my computer, which gives me the advantage of not having to look at the cameras 30 minutes. The camera stops recording at 29 minutes 59. I don't know why, but every camera does that. So the computer will keep recording. It's a setup I use for the live stream. So also for me, this is a kind of experiment. But even with a normal shotgun microphone on top of that camera, the sound is actually good enough and quite decent actually to share these practicing sessions with you on a more regular basis. We could, and just let me know in the comment section what you think about this. We could have these larger live practicing sessions, so most of the time live. Now this is a recorded session where there is a certain topic to discuss, like in this case the A major sonata first movement. I go through that with this microphone, so also to ventilate my thoughts and my ideas and my things I'm working on with you, so more focused sessions, so to say. But we could also have daily sessions, daily practicing sessions, perhaps not every day, but very regularly, where I just take that camera with the shotgun microphone and put it here for 30 minutes, uploading the raw material, which actually I don't mind opening these practicing sessions for you. So let me know in the comment section if you would like me to do that, and we can simply experiment over the course of the next months. We'll see how this develops. I see in the statistics of my channel that these live streams, these sessions on Beethoven, a little bit more than on Bach, but that's understandable, that they are very well watched. And so every live stream that we do, we reach between 50 and 150 people live, which is actually a lot of people for a live stream. And typically those live streams will get around 1,000 to 2,000 views in a couple of weeks. So this gives me the signal from you that you actually enjoy these sessions, which is all the reason I'm doing them. So again, today, live practicing session, but think about and let me know what you would think about daily practicing sessions. So less focused around the subject, just me practicing for 30 minutes as if you weren't here. That's the purpose of it all. For me, the benefit of doing that is that during these sessions, like also now, even if it's not a live session, it's amazing how much more focused you study. And of course, I'm studying always focused and always concentrated. No, I mean, we sometimes just play, and of course, that's the fun of it. You have a piano, you have an instrument, you play music. But now for the Beethoven project, I have made a list of 60 videos of 60 pieces that I want to record from Beethoven. So it's really easy for me now to say next piece is this one. This is a huge thing. knowing upfront what you're going to practice with the purpose of recording it. That's in a way YouTube served me always well during these years, having this purpose of finishing something, whether it be a music piece or just a topic I want to talk about. So finishing those things with deadlines, that's the great thing about YouTube. It can sometimes also be a little bit stressy, but that's in every aspect of life. It's not only YouTube. So these practicing sessions, for me, they serve me well as well, I would say. If they serve you well, that's of course the main purpose, but I take a lot from those sessions. So I wouldn't mind opening more of these practicing sessions that I do here every day with you. So having said all that, let's dive into some Beethoven. This is a sonata I am working on for a longer time. Never recorded it, never even not played it during a concert. So it is relatively fresh in that way, in that regard. The middle section is but that's for another session, but just to give you the overview now, is one of the more challenging pieces to play in double beat. This is a largo appassionato, and the largos in Beethoven, they are really big and slow, but I figured it out, so we'll do that in another session. Beautiful scherzo, and then the rondo, which is on its own absolutely stunning. This is a stunning sonata as a first. I mean, yeah, it's Beethoven, but imagine, guys, this is really early for Beethoven. He was still in his 20s when he wrote this. So absolutely gorgeous music, and I think you're gonna love this. So let's just start with giving you a short, or perhaps I'll play it as a whole, I don't know, as we do in the live stream. So if the piece is on a certain level, I feel confident enough to play it directly for you, I'll do that. But this is really fresher than the first sonata, but we'll give it a try. Again, I'm opening here my kitchen, so to say, so it's a vulnerable position as well, which I don't think a lot of classical musicians are doing. We typically want to hide our practicing process behind the scenes and then come on CDs and on stage with a fully practiced version of something. But I think there is of course, that's how it works, and there's nothing wrong with that. The only thing I want to say is that I will mess up sometimes, and I will sometimes say stupid things, perhaps, or even use words, perhaps. If I really forget about you being there, I can imagine me using words that you perhaps would not. No, just kidding. I will not be so angry at me, but sometimes even, I mean, I'm working on Beethoven so long, but sometimes it is frustrating because you don't feel like what worked yesterday doesn't work today anymore, and that's sometimes really close to you. I mean, it's emotional sometimes. So we'll see how this develops. Last point that I wanted to make, I totally forgot. So let's just play this piece and we see where we land. Okay, there we go. Double beat, of course. I'm not checking the tempi when I practice. When I start practicing, I should say, because that's for me a kind of indicator how well this range of double beat tempo, because we're not talking on being exactly on the metronomic tick, but there's a range around that atmosphere of tempi that we have from that time, how well that really has settled with me. So let's see how it goes. There we go. Okay, and so on. Just checking the computer here. It seems to be okay. Still, so this passage here, the middle part with all these tens, I think you call it in English, this is extremely difficult. And I mean, whatever tempo you take, you can do it a little bit faster if you don't want to play it in double beat, but this is really, really difficult. And if you think, oh my God, if you hear a recording, those people are doing it easy. Yeah, you have a certain, I would say, class of pianists who can do this really with their eyes closed, but those typically, yeah, they're not so many. I think generally that every pianist who plays this on stage for these passages, they're nervous because it is so unlogical with our brain to play another note that doesn't fit in the harmony of the left hand. We come back to that later, and I think on these particular passages, this one and also the strange Beethoven fingering, because strange in a way, it's actually almost never used. Even by people like Czerny, there is given an alternative for doing this in one hand. It's for me a tempo indicator. That's the reason I think Beethoven still wanted to have this in one hand. Of course, also a little bit to show off, because let's be honest, that was also the time of that period. He came to Vienna not only to be a composer, but in the first place to become a virtuoso. So this is rather difficult, I would say, on a modern piano which has a wider span, octave span, than on a Viennese pianoforte like this. This has the same octave span of 160 millimeters, so measured from bottom C to actually bottom C. That's the same as a clavichord. It's still just possible. And for me, it's a good tempo indicator, and I'll take the risk whenever I play this. It's of course much easier to... But yeah, why did Beethoven apply that fingering? That's a good question. An open question, I would say. For me, the answer is to show off, but he could do that. He could afford himself to do that because of the tempo that still on the edge allows this. So the octave span on the keyboard is important to do this. It's also a little bit trickier on a Viennese pianoforte because you have these slimmer upper tones. So they are actually very badly designed to play octaves. So for instance, also in the Hammerklavier Sonata, if you start with these octaves, it's so easy to just glide from them. While on the Steinway you have strong support on these upper, the black keys. That's not the case on the pianoforte. So yeah, that's of course, yeah, that's typical for that music. That was a surprise for me because on the clavichord, the Saxon keyboard, there you have for the upper tones, for the upper tones, upper notes. So the black keys, they're the white keys. So the sharps, I would say, you have more grip than on an historical keyboard like this. For me, also a tempo indicator, but anyway. So the tempo here, 2/4, is a time signature with allegro vivace. And if you would count, or if you would take my tempo now, I think I was more steady the second time, but that's always, huh? If you make a recording, that's also such one of those things on a concert that actually annoys me for myself. But for a concert it's different, but that's also the reason why I like making recordings so much. The second time you feel much more focused and concentrated than the first time. So one of the things of repeating that first segment always is because it's the repetition, the repeat of that will be better. Not because you learned a piece not good enough, it's just you're so much more in the music then. So for big concerts, of course, you prepare before the concert, but that's not really done when you play on period instruments. It's done when you play a concert on a Steinway. I've never done that in a Palais de Beaux-Arts here in Brussels or in Carnegie Hall. Then, of course, the pianist is preparing himself or herself on another piano before coming on stage, exactly to prepare that mindset. So, but overall, my tempo was, let me check. Around 69, 67, 69 for the quarter note, which is about, let's see, so Czerny indicates 132, 126, 138. He has 3 metronome numbers, and Moscheles has 112 to 144. I've made a note here, but I think it's correct. Something, so they are, Moscheles a little bit slower and faster at the same time, and Czerny is a little bit, well, in between. So I have now a tempo of 69 is 138 for the quarter note, which matches Czerny's highest number and is a little bit below Moscheles' highest number. So that's good enough. Certainly, if you see those composers and pianists also having a certain range, it's about the range, about the reconstruction of that tempo more than just following. Though, if I may say this, it's very worth your time to sticking with that tempo for a while, because it's easy to say, well, it's just a range, so let me take my own tempo because I have my own heartbeat and pulse. Yeah, of course you have, but it's learning the pulse of Beethoven that you have to do as a musician and then finally make it your own. So here typically I don't have a lot of problems sticking into that tempo, and I think it's one of the most clear examples where you could say, well, the original tempi are in single beat simply ridiculous. It would be double this speed, which would give you for the triplets. I mean, it's already relatively fast. So it would be really, really, really fast. And then you would have to do things like this with like I mean, yeah, what's the point of that? But anyway, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about what's in there when you play it like that. So one of the things that are most difficult in this piece are the first, because typically this will work after a few times. But really cold playing, tom, pom, it's hard. On a piano like this, you don't have the option of lying into the key like on a Steinway. Typically you can play much faster on a Steinway than on a Viennese pianoforte. I'm not convinced of it. I have seen it myself and done it myself. So on the Steinway you can lean in a little bit on the key, and there is this, you have the repetition action, but then you have within the repetition action in the modern action, the Yamaha has it, every grand piano has that. You can also play on a kind of inner repetition action. I don't know how to call that in English. I wouldn't know even in Dutch. So if you have the action of that piano, you have inside another mechanism that allows you to really control the repetition here. So you can lean in and play a little bit leggero, knowing you will have sound all the time. if people make recordings of journey pieces to showcase that these tempi are possible, it's typically played like that, fabulously, I would say. But that's made possible by the Stein reaction. It's impossible on a Viennese pianoforte. In order to make this work here, you have to actually do the opposite, lean out the key. So play a little bit like on the clavichord you would never do. Clavichord, stick to the keys. Again, that's something you learn, but this will remain difficult. So if you start at the beginning, let's just take my tempo here in double beat, because then we have the 8th note. So double beat, single beat, if you've never heard of this, a single beat is where you have, like for instance now, quarter note 138, you say, well, every quarter note is one tick. You put your metronome 138. How come that I don't have sound here? Just let me check. Oh, you will hear the metronome playing on the computer now because it's connected with Bluetooth to my, that's funny, to my mixing console. So here it is. And I've done something strange again because it's beats per bar, just one. Okay. So then you say every tick, tuck, 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 tuck is just one quarter note if you would put this 19th century. It's a little bit irregular because it has been restored. You know, the speed is okay, but so it's okay. Tuck, tuck, tuck. You say puck, 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 puck. Every time I hear a tick, that's one quarter note. So ta-tum, ta-dum, ta-tum, ta-tum, ta-dum. Pum pum, trum, pum pum, pum pum, pum pum, pum. So really fast. And double beat, this is, you see then the quarter note in the metronome number, the metronome equation. So to say, it's quarter note equals 138. The quarter note there is the unity of 2 ticks, like the arm of the conductor going up and down. Chuck, 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 pop, pump. Pump. And so you have this rhythmical division actually, which is in that quarter note already there. And then you have rum bum, tum, so in double beat 138, chuck, 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 tuck, 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 tuck. This is not pure enough. So also, when you play these notes, they're legato. At least there is a bow underneath that. It's not always sure whether it's meant legato. It's called legato bow. Certainly if you have... There is an indication of being legato, but here it could also mean just one motive that you have to play together. Every note in that style should have its own weight. So typically also, if people demonstrate very high speeds, you will see that you lose a little bit of this individual character. It's not a glissando. I once called it once a glissando, but that's not what I really meant. Was you lose a little bit of individual character where you kind of articulate still within the legato. So difficult. And here on the upper note, that you hear it, it's not that happens when you play this you play over 12, 13 notes a second. There are a few people who can do that for a little while, but then you hear this. It's not anymore legato even, it's like a little bit, you know, everything is kind of muddy. And that's certainly not what was meant in that time, even not in etudes playing. And actually in good piano playing today, it's still there. You need to have this individual tone quality with every note. You can also do start with the third finger, second finger here. if you really play this legato, yeah, it gives not this energy. It's not okay. And for this, the Viennese piano will not help you. It's really terrible in doing it. If you would be allowed to play this forte, would be not a problem. But playing really soft piano and fast on this region is really hard. In fact, Jenny writes somewhere in this pianoforte school that on the pianoforte you shouldn't play too loud. That's for the orchestras. So play always a little bit moderated, and even if the indication is fortissimo, and neither play too soft, because you have to have this clear quality attack of the piano, which indeed needs a little bit of energy. One trick that I try to apply is one of the best tips I ever got from Jacques van Noordmesse. If you have to play trills, ornaments, or just, this is actually a kind of ornament, play it a little bit slower than you think, and then often it works. I do prefer the 5-to-1 fingering here even. Because it will guarantee you, notwithstanding this difficult position, further leaning into the keyboard of the equal notes. So that's okay. But now I feel all the keys. Lifting my hand again, and then feeling the keys. A little bit this movement with the wrist. Okay, practice that. It's like a surprise here, what's going to happen, and there we are. Also here, every eighth note has this individual quality. You have an accent on 1 and 3, but you still give them a little bit of pulse, because 2/4 time signature, remember that for the rest of your life, oftentimes is 4/8 in this style, even in Bach's. But you have clear 2/4 where you have 2 quarter notes, really, where the harmonic emphasis is actually on the quarter notes more than on the eighth notes. But in a case like this is such a typical example of 4/8. We have 4/8 notes, so they get a little bit more weight than when you just would have a 4/8, for instance. So that's the reason why they take 2/4 to create this kind of microscopic landscape, where with these smaller note values, often added there, like 32nd notes or triplets and 16ths, you see that in Haydn last movements, often indicated as presto. So people say, well, they're really, really fast. Yes, according to the eighth notes, they are. But there you have this level of clear detail, articulation sometimes even. That's just in between. So there we go. Accent. Left hand. Chom. So every time the E comes, chom, pam, tom, tom, pam, pam, pa, dum, tom, pam, 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 pa. Nice counter accent. Dum pam dum pam pam chum pam chum 2 3 pam pam. Pam note here is the E. So ti ta dum pum 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 dum pum. That's the rhythmical pattern. Here as an orchestra, so here's a cello double bass, and this is remarkably advanced in this style and this period. You should really not underestimate that. This could be 80 years later. Rallentando. D sharp. D sharp and D. So the way he comes here to this second theme is amazing. It's amazing. It's so cantabile. You have the beginning of this tone, so lightful and so full of joy, and then suddenly there is this rhythmical aspect, which works great in this tempo, I think. And then you have this sudden shift after the fortissimo piano. Everybody's happy, but now and suddenly there's like the blue sky has signs of dark clouds now. So fortissimo on these D sharps, on these second beats. And by the way, you will hear some airplanes. That's what we have here sometimes. Those are F-16 fighters of the Belgian army. Really safe place here. Well, you can hope. Also here you have this harmony. So it goes from E minor, kind of G major there, but it shifts constantly from one key to another, and play with those timings, I would say. Also here, never lose those voices or this lamentation here. And the relief will come at the next page. Where are we here? Let's just start here. much easier it is, forte. Also here in a motive like this, 3 times, you cannot do 3 times the same thing because it's very boring. 1 time, 2. No, it is you build up one motive up and another. And then there is silence. Can guarantee that this works all the time, 0. And now it's just as if the person who was just walking us around in this blue sky, heaven and landscape pops up again. And if nothing happened, we continue our journey. Also, these passages, don't underestimate it, they're difficult because Beethoven is skipping notes here. Typically, I would practice that slowly, so that you really have the right hand is just continuing. So that you start thinking in groups. It's like if your brain need a break in the middle of this figure. So ya ta 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 tam, break ta 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 tam. And once you have implemented that, you really have to maintain that because you will still you will make this again. You see this again as a unity. So you have to practice that a lot of times until one day it sticks for the rest of your life. But still, this is a very difficult passage, regardless of tempo. It's easier in double beat, of course. Though you will have to show more detail in double beat. That's another thing. Once you mess up a little bit, there is a lot of cleaning to be done. If you play it much faster, and certainly if you use the sustaining pedal, which in this movement I actually am not, then of course you have a lot of things to cover up, which is not a bad thing because on stage we have to, do the things we have to do, right? D sharp should be. And certainly if you come here fortissimo, let's do it again. This scale down on the bass, on a Viennese piano, you can of course hit that note like a church clock. It's unbelievable. Cantabile. And then the right hand. It's a choir of angels. Of course, if I sing that, that's far from being a choir of angels, but that's how you should. It's like on an organ of Fenwick, you know, on the keyboard that's really far away. It's like singing in the far distance. And these rhythmical, there's 8 notes that you had in the beginning, so strong, they just keep continuing. It's so brilliantly composed, everything comes together here. And so what do you want more as a musician or as a listener than this? This is unbelievably high quality music. The first sonata as well. This one is also big, huge sonata. And then we come to the C major. Those 3 first sonatas, it escapes our minds just to realize what Beethoven at that young of an age did with the heritage of Mozart, because that basically it was, and Haydn of course, and C.P.E. Bach and Bach. He was actually also from very young involved in playing music of Bach, well-tempered clavier. He did that in Bonn with his teacher Neve on the clavichord, similar clavichord as I did. So with this in his fingers and mind, he might have had an advantage on something like somebody like Mozart, who only discovered Bach and Handel much later in his career. So, and I think it's important to realize that, because the level of Bach and his students and second generation students, we kind of forget about that, because we typically look to the Viennese school as another school of Bach, but the level, technical level that Bach and his students had was unseen for the rest of the 18th century. And I think that Beethoven, having this music of Bach so early in his life, gave him a real advantage in synthesizing all these styles together on a technical level, perhaps, that Mozart certainly had at the end of his life, but not yet at the beginning. So the Munich sonatas typically, they are unbelievable, beautiful music, but technically you actually are surprised sometimes to see what Bach wrote in that particular case 30 years before. The partitas, for instance, the keyboard partitas, they are way more difficult than those Munich sonatas. So there is the infiltration again from that Bach generation into the Viennese music, made that music also go up in technical abilities. I'm not a specialist in this, but that's how I see it today. So wonderful, wonderful piece. So I'm looking now at the computer as if I would see your chat. That's how used I am to a live stream. But there is no chat because this is not live. Hope you enjoyed this session, guys. And also having this video being premiered, which has advantages of having the chat next to the video, so you can communicate, and you love doing that. I can tell, because if I scroll through the chat after a live session, it's wonderful for me also to see that many of you are getting to know each other. I know many of you are emailing to each other, having things to communicate with each other, and that's of course what a social platform are all about. Is forming a community, is bringing you together with it, and bringing people together and sharing things that we're all passionate about. So if you like that, let me know. You lose a little bit the possibility of not being there at the beginning of the premiere. You have to rewatch that beginning later, because there's no way to scroll back while the video is being premiered, but that's also happening with a live stream, so it's a little bit in between. Let me know in the comment section what you think about these daily practicing sessions that we talked about at the beginning. If you haven't seen that introduction, maybe after the live stream of this premiere, you can scroll back and just listen what I proposed on that. So smaller session, less focus, just me practicing, and I'm looking forward to reading that, because I'm thinking with this idea for a longer time. And in the meantime, I thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing to this channel. Hit that bell icon. Many of you ask me how to be notified of the live streams. They are announced on my channel, mostly a few days until a week up front. So you can also always go to YouTube, my YouTube homepage, and you can hit the bell icon. Normally, typically, YouTube should give you a notification, certainly for the live videos. And last thing, but not least, I thank my Patreons for supporting everything we do. We reached almost 90 Patreons. So if you haven't looked at my Patreon page, we'll really appreciate that. Even throwing $1 a month, I mean, imagine 10% of Authentic Sound viewers would do that. We could make this really a full-time job. So having said all that, I thank you again for watching. Hope you enjoyed the session. See you next time. Bye.